This month's sponsor of the Ad TechGod Pod is Flash Talking. They were also the first month sponsor when I launched this podcast. In fact, Flash Talking has a long history of being first to market. It was the first ad tech platform to pioneer dynamic, creative optimization, aka DCO. It was also the first ad server to go cookieless and natively integrate verification. And it was the first to use AI for creative classification. Then, after being bought by Mediaocean, Flash Talking was the first to combine open web and CTV with walled gardens. With its track record of always being first, it's no wonder Flash Talking was just named number one for creative management platforms on G2 based on hundreds of verified customer reviews. It's also number one for cross-channel advertising software, and now it's running a promotion for the first person to use the hashtag #FlashTalkingFirst on social media. So go to LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, even Threads, and use hashtag #FlashTalkingFirst. And if you're first, you win. Welcome to the Ad TechGod Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, Ad TechGod. Welcome to another episode of the Ad TechGod Pod, where we meet some of the industry's greatest business leaders. Today's guest is John Whitmore, the SVP of Business Development at 33Across, where he's been making a big impact for the past 5.5 years. John's career spans a variety of companies that have shaped the industry, not just ad tech, including TiVo, Bizzo, ValueClick, Omnicom, and many more. But beyond his impressive resume, John is known as one of the nicest and most genuine people in the industry, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have him on the show today. Let's dive in and get to know John, his journey, and where he sees the industry moving. John, welcome to the Ad TechGod Pod.
Thank you, ATG. Very excited to be here. This is an exciting moment and super excited to get going.
Yeah, same here. And sorry it took so long. It's tough when you do this once a week and people are like, I want to be on, or I want someone on. And I look at them like, there's only 52 weeks, like I got to just go through the list as they come in. And, I try to keep it pretty fair with the types of guests, also, a male-female ratio. So sometimes it takes a little longer than I like, but thank you for being here.
100%. Absolutely.
Awesome. John, you have an awesome background, obviously having worked at ValueClick, which to me is super interesting because anyone who worked at ValueClick, to me, I look at as kind of the OGs of the industry. But how did you get into the industry? What do you kind of attribute to your growth and what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I ended up in New York in a strange way because I met a girl and she's from New York and we moved here after college. And then getting into advertising in general, it was the 1990s. And I had an interview and went to work at a big ad agency in New York City and got lucky, got offered a job and started as a media planner at Gray Advertising on 777 3rd Avenue in the mid-90s and just kind of rode the wave into the boom bust, which led directly into ad tech. So yeah, it was didn't happen on purpose. I was a history major in college at a big university, and that was definitely not the direction I was looking for when I came to New York, to be honest.
What do you think, obviously starting in the 90s, not to, put an age on it, but starting in the 90s, how was media planning different back then than it is now? I mean, a lot has changed in, 20 something years. How has it changed and how did that kind of help you in what you do today?
Well, first of all, I had to wear a 3-piece suit to the office 5 days a week with kind of the lowest of all salaries. I bought 3 suits, very heavy cotton. I found out the bad way in the New York City subways, and then rotated those suits each day going into the office as a media planner at Gray. So, it was definitely old school. It was definitely in the middle of the beginning of the internet. And it was a lot of spreadsheets. It was a lot of DOS software. And it was every ad agency and every advertiser had their own way of doing things very manually. It was interesting. It was a real different time than even 10 years later.
What got you into digital, right? So 1990s, what kind of media planning were you really doing? Was there a lot across the digital scape, or was it more other medium?
It was all other mediums to start. I was spot buying TV across 100 markets for Dairy Queen and doing network buys for Procter and Gamble and doing radio buys and out of home buys, standard kind of non-digital out of home buys. And it was very manual. Fell into digital. I mean, I was working at a big agency and they wanted to win business, and it was, heading towards the mid to late 90s. And there were a lot of the dot-com boom was amping up, and it was, you wanted to win business, you had to go win Pest.com and other digital brands back in the day. So just fell into it, rode the wave, got some opportunities. And, next thing you know, I started working for a tech company in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Which one was that?
So I started at, I was at an agency called Giraffe. It was a Chicago-based IPG agency at the time. We launched their digital business in the late 90s. And then my boss got grabbed by an agency-ad server called Mediaplex. And Mediaplex was in the process of the public company on the NASDAQ. Stock was struggling. Boom bust was about to happen. And ValueClick came in and bought us and basically killed off the agency side of the business. So that's how I ended up on the tech side, not even really on purpose. Got bought by a digital agency-ad server. And next thing you know, we were just an ad server. And next thing you know, we were bought by an ad network. So it was just riding the wave and learning as you go and trying to figure out how an ad server worked. And it was early days.
It's funny because we talk about how much consolidation there is right now, but it's been like this for a long time. I think we go through these ebbs and flows of consolidations and M&A waves. I think to maybe people newer in the industry, they haven't seen this before or experienced this. They feel like this is weird or abnormal, but this was not abnormal, earlier in my career. This was kind of something I saw also in 2008, 2009. There was also a phase of print dying out, a bunch of consolidation in like the website space. Everybody was buying each other up, creating these kind of vertical networks, right? It was like either automotive focused or it was travel focused. And people were basically gobbling up every possible online publisher they could to create this like vertical network of sites. And now we're kind of seeing the same, like a lot of the TV broadcasters, or if you want to call them like cable cos, are acquiring content distribution platforms, whether it's Zumo or anybody else, like Pluto. And you're starting to see this trend kind of repeat itself. So it's kind of interesting to see how we see this consolidation and expansion kind of happening so quickly in our space.
I think there's an absolute map that you could draw from the boom bust into the early 2000s, into pre-programmatic, which then turned into, Right Media and DoubleClick Exchange, into programmatic and data, which is now, we're heading into signal loss, AI, privacy, and into another kind of new world that's going to be the next iteration of ad tech, digital media and such. That very similar yet very different, very scary though very exciting.
It is exciting.
So yep, 100%.
It is. It's weird because I kind of sit on the outside of it all now, right? I'm not really in it, but I'm also very much so involved, and I have my finger on the pulse. AI comes up a lot, John, and I know that you are very familiar with AI and some of the trends. Like, what can you tell me? What can you tell the audiences in terms of what you're seeing around AI, and how is that really paving the way for the future of our industry, if it is at all?
No, it absolutely is. I'm a big believer on that side of the spectrum, and you read a whole lot about AI the last 2 years, a lot of positive, a lot of investment, obviously still ongoing. And now you're reading more of, will the investment pay off? What financial companies are going to struggle as a result? And that's really not the way I look at it. I look at it, you can compare it to, the internet started and it laid a infrastructure. Well, right now we're getting an infrastructure of kind of AI from the ground up. And then it's like, okay, as the internet started to kind of evolve, what became popular, what companies did well, what companies didn't well. And there was a cleaning out period. I think we're absolutely heading into a cleaning out period where AI is going to be a big part of it. And then you look at AI and ad tech. I mean, ad tech right now for AI, you see a lot of creative companies, a lot of things happening on the creative side. Makes a ton of sense. It's low-hanging fruit. It's very easy. But then you look at, okay, how can AI affect targeting? How can it affect measurement? How can it affect signal loss? How can it affect all the change that we're living through right now? Privacy, obviously, that's what's going to be the next iteration of this world we're living on. We'll call it ad tech right now. Who knows what it'll be called in 5 to 10 years? But yeah, no, super exciting. This could be a lot of bloodshed, but super exciting on what will happen and what can happen over the next 5, 10 years.
See, I don't know. I feel like we talk a lot about the bloodshed, and like I get it. Like there are so many people looking for work. I just spoke to someone who I find incredibly amazing. She's incredibly smart. She left her employer, ton of experience, extremely smart, extremely just knowledgeable about the space. I don't want to say who this person is. And that was kind of the thing. It was like, do I leave the industry or do I stay in the industry? I'm really familiar with these 2 or 3 topics, but all of the topics she and I discussed were honestly like the major trends that we're looking at, whether it's, retail media or AI or some sort of creative AI combo. Like these are all the things that her experience was. And yet she's thinking about leaving. And I'm like, no, don't leave. We need people like you to stay. Like it might be a little bumpy, but we'll rebound. And then these are the types of products that we're going to see major scale in and growth in as we refine it around, the data that we have available and just the regulation and policies that we have coming up. So
I agree with you 100%. In 2002, 2003, it felt like more than half the industry left. Now, whether it was companies that went out of business and people lost their jobs, absolutely. But there was a lot of people that were just burned out and didn't want to do it anymore and went to different places. Well, the people who are left are the people that you're interviewing on a weekly basis. It's the old timers. It's the people who are building companies. It's the people who are taking kind of ownership of the space. And that's going to happen again. Over the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be a lot of people leaving, and there's going to be a lot of people making choices to do other things, and that's fine. But the people who stay and the people who dig in and the people who are super interested in AI and how it's going to affect our tech and digital media world, those are the people that will be running companies, and probably very large companies for the next 5 to 10 years.
John, from your experience working at, Omnicom and ValueClick and TiVo, and now 33Across, what do you think was some of the major, highlights that helped you reach the level that you're at today? And what can you say to people listening as to what helped contribute to your success and growth?
For me specifically, for better or worse, I tried and did a lot of different jobs at a lot of different types of companies based off of what I was interested in at the time or who was interested in me at the time. And so you can see a rather, a journey that's kind of a bit all over the place, a lot of different types of companies, going from a startup like a Bizzo to a large public company like a TiVo to an Omnicom, which is, obviously a major holding company, and trying to help them on kind of the technology and data side of things as Analect was founded and grew. I learned a lot, had a ton of experiences. And I think that's what a lot of this is about, is getting as many experiences as possible, doing as many things as you can. Try not to let yourself get put in a box, and, wear as many hats as you can in the jobs that you do. And it's obviously easy to do at smaller companies and larger companies, but there are a lot of people that say they do one thing well. And right now it's a tough place to be if you're looking for a job. So if you can do a bunch of different things and you have a big experience or large experience with a group of different types of companies, I think that's helpful right now. But that's all I've ever wanted. I want to be excited. I want to learn. I want to take ownership. I want to have responsibilities. And that's, I think, helped me kind of grow through this kind of crazy career I've had over the last, 25 plus years.
Well, John, you're not the only one with a crazy career. So who would have ever thought I ended up doing this? But it's fun. And, we ride the wave and we see what happens. And
yep.
I agree with you. I think a lot of my career choices also weren't necessarily my choice. I think it's just the jobs I got. The people who said, hey, we trust you. We think that you'd be good here. Join us. And then you just go with the flow, and you might love it. You might hate it. But, in the end, you learn a lot from every place you work. Okay. So I'm a little bit familiar about 33Across. And I know that obviously there's a lot of addressable solutions that you have, like your Lexicon product. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing sitting where you sit at 33Across, obviously with addressability being a big topic in the future? Like, how do you see addressability being an ongoing trend for the next, 12 to, 18 months?
Amazing question. I mean, one interesting thing, one of the best things about 33 Across is that we've been around forever. I mean, we've been around 17 years, and we do multiple things that touch multiple aspects of the programmatic kind of ecosystem or supply chain. And so when, Google's first kind of proclamation around cookie deprecation now 4+ years ago, whatever it's been, we felt we had to do something. We felt we had to do something for several of our own existing businesses as well as for partners that we were working with, and what ended up being a new product suite for the marketplace. And 4 years ago, it was even messier than it is today. And today it's pretty messy when it comes to, throwing in signal loss and how can you handle and manage addressability well. And is it real? Is it not real? How do you throw measurement in there, which is going to be a huge part of it as well. So, we saw a real gap. We still see a huge gap in the market, and, addressability is going to change significantly over the next couple of years. So many less signals are going to be out there than there are even today. Cookie will still be one of them, obviously, but there's going to be, hundreds of others that we will be able to use and not use. So it's how can you deal with that? How can you build a solution that is privacy compliant, privacy safe for consumers, number one, add value for brands, for the ecosystem kind of next, and then scale and measurement has to be a part of it. And if it's not, then it's not going to survive. So that's the focus. I mean, we mentioned AI earlier. I think AI is going to have a big part of this based off of, the predictive necessity with limited signals in a world where it's all about first party data and not third party data. So again, you have to start looking at those things too. So it's going to be a lot of change, a lot of things we haven't even thought of. There'll be things we look at over the next couple of years, but I'm very excited to be in the space, to be focused on things like addressability and measurement. And I think it's going to be an exciting ride over the next couple of years.
I think so too. I think we talk a lot about signal loss. We talk a lot about regulation changes. Obviously, the cookies were gone. Now they're back, but they're going to go away fast. But I think it's a very interesting time to work, because what we are seeing and what I'm kind of witnessing from where I sit in the space is that creativity is there. The minds are there. The product people and the engineering people are there. And what's happened is, the loss of cookies was sort of either an accelerant to innovation, or it was people who sat back and said, we'll figure it out when it happens. But the ones who accelerated their development and tried to understand how to solve for a cookieless world and how to create addressable industries or addressable inventory, I think those are the ones who are going to really advance and going to grow. I think the ones who sat back on the sidelines and just said, we'll figure it out when it happens, they might be happy that there's no solid deadline for cookies. But the reality is that it's going to go away faster than everyone thinks. Those particular cookies and the way that the messaging will be one to accelerate this, not necessarily slow it down. I think we'll be very surprised to see how long it'll take for cookies to become such a small percentage of our inventory that we can target against.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at it today as a signal that as it goes away, it'll become more valuable, because there will be a set of consumers that will accept third-party cookies, and that set of consumers will end up looking a certain way and end up being a certain way, and they will have a certain value. Hashed emails, UID2s, ramp IDs, they will have authentication, they will have a certain value. Probabilistic will have a certain value. Contextual will have a certain value. I don't think of it as a waterfall, but in my head, I think of it as a kind of layered group of how you're going to treat the signal, the users, as you see them. And then again, measurement's going to be key. So yeah, it's just, in my mind, third-party cookies will just be another signal that we will or will not have, and it'll have a certain value associated with it.
What in particular, John, kind of keeps you up at night the most when it comes to, advertising or ad tech? I think we're often bombarded with a lot of negativity. I'm hoping that's changed a little bit over the last year, but what keeps you up at night the most in regards to advertising or ad tech?
I think, keeping me up at night's a strong phrase, mostly because I've been doing this for so long, and that I've been through amazing times, I've been through horrible times, I've been through many times in between. And so nothing really keeps me up at night outside of, the family stuff, which is the most important stuff, obviously. But I think a lot about how Terry Quasha talks about the space and how, the space has had to and has to grow up to a certain point where we need to take responsibility for what we've done over the years or what we will do in the future. And I think we move too slow, and there ends up being, a certain percentage of companies and people in the market that just, they're not really getting with the flow. They're still trying to do things that are looked at maybe not as ethical or moral as maybe they were or weren't, 20 years ago. So it's trying to help move the ecosystem in the right direction. And I think we're getting there. I think there's a lot of great companies, a lot of great people that are doing the right things the right way. And I think, as more of us do that and as the ecosystem cleans out the next couple of years, I think we'll be headed faster down the right path. But it's just, you just can't keep doing the same things that we did 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 10 years ago. We have to evolve. We have to be better. And so that's what I'm excited about, but absolutely definitely keeps me up at night when I feel like we're not moving as fast as we should.
I think you touch on something a lot, which is we can't keep doing what we were doing in the past. But I think a weird part for me is in the news, I hear a lot about, unethical practices, unclear targeting criteria from various platforms. Recently, just a few days ago, there was an article that came out about kickbacks and rebates and whatever else in the market. And I read the article and I'm like, okay, this is a great article, great write-up. Cool. Nothing new. Like if we kind of knew this was happening 10 years ago, now it's being published. I think everybody's very complacent and just kind of accepts it for what it is. I think we look at it as a profit engine, but what we don't often think about is how does that impact the way media planners are spending their dollars? And I think that's the scary part. I think it's not hey, they need to make margin. So if they spend 20 million or 200 million, they get 2 or 3% back. I think is that incentivizing them to spend the dollars where it is best for their pockets or where it is best for the client. And I think that's what keeps me up, right? I think that's some of those things where I'm like, this is kind of shameful. Like we shouldn't be doing this, or at least be open about it and be transparent. Hey, we get 10% back from this publisher, from this platform. And because of it, like we're going to spend because we get more, for our buck for you. So, I don't know. It's an interesting space always.
I would just add that to my point earlier. I mean, that these things have been happening for a long time. You throw big platforms like Google and others into the mix and, they figure out ways to kind of take it to the next level. So, I think a lot of that, to your point, should be made more transparent. If it's not looked at as ethical or legal, it shouldn't happen. And we need to work our way through some of these things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these things have been happening at certain levels since I was on the agency side in the 90s. I mean, it's been happening for a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a couple brands that have my loyalty, and not necessarily in ad tech, but just in terms of brands in general. Is there a particular brand that has your loyalty that you feel you absolutely can't live without? And I'm curious as to why, like why you love that brand.
Sure. So I'm unique in that maybe it's because I am a little bit older, but even when I was younger, I was never a big, brand guy. I didn't like wearing stuff that had brands on it that I had to pay for. So buying a shirt and it's got a big Adidas logo or Nike logo on it and you're wearing it. I never really understood that. Didn't really make sense to me. So even to today, I don't wear a lot of things that are not branded with something that isn't associated with either me or where I work or what I do. There are some things that go against that a little bit. I mean, I was a soccer player growing up, and so I wore a lot of soccer brands just because I had to, and those things still stick. I still like my Adidas shoes. I still like certain clothing that is maybe more soccer related or more sports related. And then obviously my teams. So I'm a Detroit guy. I grew up in the Michigan area. I wear a lot of University of Michigan paraphernalia, Detroit sports paraphernalia. So those brands mean something to me. Very passionate, obviously sports fans, all of that. Outside of those types of brands that have been important in my life, like down deep to the bone, I don't really wear many things that are, just random brands, an Apple t-shirt or Microsoft or, anything in tech that's not related to what I do. So maybe I'm unique to answer that question, but for me, it's really, I wear a few things. They mean a ton to me, and that's what I wear when I'm not working. And then when I'm working, I'm all about where I work or what I do. wearing my AdTechGod t-shirt.
Awesome. As long as you're wearing an Ad TechGod t-shirt, you're good. Last question as we kind of wrap up the podcast, and thanks again to you and 33Across for being here. How do you measure your happiness, John? Like, I know that you were saying nothing keeps you up at night, like you've been doing this a long time, but how do you check in on yourself and say, I'm happy, I'm content, or I'm not?
It's been interesting. I mean, my career that changes over the course of your career as an adult, right? Because when you're younger, maybe you have a family and kids, then you start thinking about, kind of more the work-life balance and how do I get home for events? How do I make sure I'm on train in time to get back in time for dinner and those types of things. So, as the kids get older and as the family evolves, I think that then changes kind of how you look at it. So for me now, with my kids older and my kids, heading into college and eventually out of college, it's more of, my focus is, my family, but with my wife, but also where can I put more hours into work? Where can I focus more? What do I want to do? So it's more of work-life balance. Absolutely. Working out, doing some things to make sure I'm healthy, going to the doctor, all those important things. But also, these are now days that I can put a lot more time into work and maybe not worry as much about getting up in the middle of the night with the young kids or those types of things. So for me today, it's like evolving how I used to do that and now into what will be my next iteration of my work-life balance as my kids get older and I get older, obviously.
Well, John, that actually brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you for being here today, and thanks for your trust, and thanks for always supporting what I'm doing.
100%, and thank you. It's a great honor to be on the Ad TechGod Pod, and I look forward to listening to many more down the road.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ad TechGod Pod, a podcast for the people about the people that make ad tech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of ad tech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of ad tech innovation.